Humans don't make our stories. It's stories that make us human. It's not until we know the stories of each other that we embrace our humanity. When I know the stories of my people and my culture, that's when I become human myself. In order to better understand each other and the stories that make us uniquely human, I have to know who I am so I can appreciate who you are. Welcome, everyone. I'm Tamika McSwain, and I want to welcome you to my presentation on my journey to becoming an critical multicultural educator. Over the duration of this course, I've embarked on a transformative journey, exploring various aspects of multicultural education and striving to develop the skills that are necessary and meaningful to affirm the intersexual identities of future scholars and their families and their communities. So first I have to ask myself, when I'm exploring personal identity, who am I? Well, who am I? Let's see. Well, first I have to understand personal identity. So, personal identity really refers to a sense of self that a person develops over their life. Your identity is a mix of how you see yourself and how others perceive you. For example, things that you like, things that you value, your ethnicity, your nationality, your beliefs, your class, social class, anything that makes you uniquely who you are. So then I say to myself, I am somebody. That's who I am. And so I can tell myself that I am definitely fearfully and wonderfully made. Because through this journey, I had to really dive deep into understanding my own identity. I had to spend time reflecting on my own cultural heritage, my familiar background, and my personal experiences. And this introspection allowed me to recognize the biases and the privileges I bring to the educational setting. As I dived into this work, I found myself reflecting deeply on my own individual racial histories and identities. Growing up, I was fortunate to have access to really rich narratives and experiences that shaped my understanding of race and culture. However, I did recognize that I had privilege inherent in the access and the barriers faced by many in accessing their own racial histories and identities. Growing up, as a dark-skinned Black girl in a predominantly white small town in South Carolina, I was faced with a multitude of challenges. So from the white kids calling me or telling me that I'm too Black, to the Black kids saying, well, you're too white acting. I struggled to find my place in society that often seemed to define beauty and worth through a very narrow lens. But amidst these struggles, however, my family stood as a beacon of love and affirmation for me. And with the roots tracing back to my Native American and Black grandmother marrying my white grandfather, I knew and I was taught that I was beautiful and I was made in the image of God and worthy of love and respect. And therefore, I just keep telling myself that I was fearfully and wonderfully made, which makes me somebody. However, messages that I received from society painted a different picture. I was often made to feel inferior and less than and unseen, yet through it all, I held on to the mantra that I am somebody. This affirmation for me became my guiding light. It reminded me of my inherent value and worthiness, regardless of how others perceive me. And however, the impact of the community, they definitely have this social identity theory, which is the perception of self and others based on the social group that one is a part of. So there are some aspects of our identity. And here's a wheel of social identity. It incorporates ethnicity, our social economic status. It incorporates our sex, gender, sexual orientation, the national origin, our first language, physical, emotional, or developmental disabilities, or age, religious, or spiritual affiliation, and most importantly, a race. And there are different aspects of our identity that we need to focus on. These effects can really, of the social identity, and can really impact a child negatively or positively. Negatively, they may require confirmation by others, and it's very difficult for shy kids. And then also there is a potential for depression. However, if we shape them in a positive light, we can definitely shape their self-image. We can provide them a sense of belonging, and that way they will foster love for everyone. To deepen my understanding of multicultural education and social justice, I engaged in an academic study and professional development. I immersed myself in readings and looked at workshops and discussions that challenged conventional perspectives and provided insights into the experiences of marginalized communities. So I began to critically analyze the curriculum, the pedagogy, and the policies in educational settings. So I questioned those voices that, or who was represented, whose experience were this centered on, or whose needs were really being met. And this reflection allowed me to develop culturally responsive teaching strategies that honor the diverse backgrounds of experiences of my scholars. So let's think about the inclusivity of the pedagogy. So we have, if we are wanting to create this multicultural classroom and be really consciously leading and guiding us, our scholars, to be recognizing just cultures from all over, we have to engage and integrate. We have to also reflect and assess those things that we've already been doing. We need to identify what the issues are and align them to what the needs of our scholars. And then we should definitely investigate and plan some things out to let us know that we need to become more inclusive. All those things together will help shape our classroom climate, and they will help us with our instructional strategies. And most importantly, I feel like it's the student motivation that we will definitely need. So if we dive into this multicultural education, I want to make sure that I begin with one of the most impactful resources that guided my journey. It's a book titled Affirming Diversity, The Socio-Political Context of Multicultural Education by Sonia Nito and Patty Bode. So this book provided me with a framework for understanding basically the complex interplay between race and culture and education. It underscored the importance of affirming the identities of our scholars and their communities and their families. And the lessons that really resonated deeply with me, with my own experiences. This text also provided me with a comprehensive understanding of the social political landscape that shapes multicultural education. It it emphasized the importance of acknowledging and celebrating diversity while confronting systematic inequalities, and also advocating for social justice and education. So armed with this knowledge, I definitely began to critically analyze and explore the exploration of the barriers that we have in our curriculum and pedagogy. I questioned whose voices were represented, and I had a reflection on our developmentally consciously responsive teaching strategies, and that I really needed to honor the diverse backgrounds and experiences of my scholars, continue to do that. So through this, I definitely explored the barriers of individuals, and then these barriers, they range from like historical to systematic oppression to cultural assimilation, internalized racism. And I grapple with the complexities of identity formation and the ways in which dominate narratives can overshadow marginalized voices. So, drawing from a diverse array of resources, such as exploring the perspectives about identity through self-portraits by Utopia, and then culturally responsive teaching across pre-K through 20-year-olds, honoring the historical naming practice of students of color. This is by Norma Morum. I really gained an insight into the power and representation of culturally responsive pedagogy. And these resources underscore the importance of validating scholars' identities and the experiences in the classroom. Furthermore, I sought to really empower myself and others to challenge inequalities and create inclusive learning environments. I engaged with resources like Systematic Racism, Explained, which is by ACT TV, and also Racism in Schools, How Can I Fight It by Above the Noise. And I use those to help me deeply understand the systematic racism and explore strategies for combating it in educational settings. So ACT TV's video on systematic racism has been instrumental in helping me illustrate the systematic nature of racial inequalities to my scholars by providing concrete examples of historical context. And these resources has enabled me to facilitate meaningful conversations about the root causes of racial disparities and the importance of collective action in addressing them. This resource also empowered me to confront systematic injustice and definitely advocate for equity in education. And I recognize the importance of dismantling the barriers that we have to create a more inclusive learning environment where every scholar should feel seen and heard and valued. So recognizing this significance of community engagement that I need, I now know that as educators, we can connect with initiatives like the Southern Nevada Black Educators Initiative, which is SNB EI, and then the Mass Liberation Nevada. And these organizations, they are dedicated to advancing social equity and education through advocacy and outreach and grassroots organizing. And then by collaborating with them, we as educators, we can strengthen our commitment to uplifting marginalized voices and dismantling oppressive systems. So the SNBEI has definitely empowered me to amplify Black voices and celebrate Black excellence and advocate for the needs of Black scholars and educators. So Mass Liberation Nevada has broadened my understandings of the intersections between education and criminal justice reform. Their advocacy efforts in the community-based interventions that they have inspired me to work towards creating more just and inclusive environmental settings that are in educational settings in our environment through collaboration with these. I know that I will learn how to support, and I have been supporting scholars impacted by mass incarceration, for instance, and I need to advocate for systematic change. And I'm glad that I'm able to learn about those resources as well. So as we know, we need to be empowered through knowledge about these multicultural resources as educators, and knowledge is power. And so I would like to, before we end, give you all and provide you with some resources to further your reading and exploration. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or would like to continue this conversation. Just want to give you a few resources. The first resource is Educator. This community of educator, activists, and advocates has provided me with invaluable insights into the importance of centering the voices and experiences marginalized communities in education. Also, Learning for Justice, which was formerly Teaching Tolerance. So if you look for the website, is now it's called Learning for Justice. Their resources on equity and diversity have equipped me with the tools to change biases and promote social justice in the classroom. And then I actually have integrated these materials into my teaching practice, and I've been able to foster empathy, understanding, and respect amongst my scholars. Also, we have Facing History of Ourselves, and it's enriched my teaching practice by providing me with more resources for teaching the difficult topics that we're talking about, which is racism, prejudice, and even genocide. So then we also have the National Equity Project, and the National Equity Project, it really has deepened my understanding for systematic inequalities in education and provided me with strategies for addressing those things. So it helps me advocate for policy practices and promote equity and inclusion in education for sure. And then we also have No Racism in Schools 1865. And through learning about the workshops that I've and the trainings that these programs have available, I know that I will gain strategies for promoting diversity and equity and inclusion in my classroom and in my school community as a whole. And so we also have Responding to Hate and Bias in the West by Mrs. Cassandra Dillard. And so by implementing restorative justice practices and fostering dialogue, I've been able to address some incidents of hate and bias, unfortunately, in our schools in a constructive and emblematic way, however. And then we are promoting like healing and understanding amongst our scholars and our staff as well. And so then we also go to the Zen Project. So their materials and their lesson plans, y'all, they center around experiences of historically marginalized groups, challenging traditional narratives of conquest and oppression. And so then we go to Race. It's a documentary series. And it's called Race, The Power of an Illusion, Episode 3, The House We Live In. And it is by California Real. This documentary series has 3 episodes, and I highly recommend that everyone go and watch all 3 of these episodes. With episode 3 in particular, which is what we had to focus on, it really, by incorporating the resources into my curriculum, I've really been able to facilitate discussions about race, privilege, and systematic racism, empowering scholars to critically analyze and challenge dominant narratives. And I am looking forward to doing more than that with my upcoming scholars for next school year. So looking ahead, excuse me, I want to emphasize the fact that I am 1,000% committed to continuing my journey as a critical multicultural educator. I understand that this work is ongoing and requires continual self-reflection and learning and growth. I'm dedicated to advocating for equity and social justice in education and empowering all of my scholars and all scholars in general to embrace their identities. So I would like to just keep in mind the quote that when you know better, you do better. So I say to myself, I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept. So in conclusion, as you can see, my journey towards becoming a critical multicultural educator has been guided by a diverse range of resources and initiatives. It has been one of self-discovery, learning, growth, as I mentioned before. Each of these resources has contributed to my growth and development in meaningful ways. So equipping me, I feel like, with the knowledge and skills and perspective needed to affirm the identities of my future scholars and their families and their communities. As I continue on this path, I am committed to affirming these scholars' identities, and I hope to create the most inclusive learning environment where they all do feel valued, respected, and empowered to succeed. I thank you for joining me on this journey. Together, we can all strive to create a world where every single scholar knows without a doubt that they are somebody. Thank you.